Hello, and welcome to today's class on market intervention. You probably have heard many people argue on things like minimum wage, but I'm not here to persuade anybody on whether it's evil or not. I'm just going to discuss the concrete effects of market intervention, such as price ceilings, price floors, and taxation. This is possible because there are concrete, observable, predictable effects on the market according to the law of supply and demand. You've probably seen this chart before. What I'll do is I'll go over the basics of supply and demand and then give you various cases where the state or other actors intervene in the market. We'll talk about price ceilings, price floors, and taxation. This is beneficial to you because it's always good to learn about the world around you. And unless you go and live in the mountains and grow your own food and live all by your lonesome, you're going to be affected by market intervention in some way or another. You can find a discussion of this topic in greater detail in the 12th chapter of Rothbard's book, Man, Economy, and State, or any other major textbook on economics, such as Hubbard and O'Brien's Macroeconomics. So first, supply and demand. So say we're talking about the market of dog toys. Alright, if the price is, say, $100, there's going to be very little demand. So over here we have price, and here we have quantity, and we have this demand curve. So at a very high price, there's very little quantity demanded. Whereas if the price were to go from $100 down to maybe 10 cents, well then people would be much more willing to buy a squeaky dog toy from the store. And so the quantity demanded would be very high. However, supply has a different curve because at a very low price, it's very unprofitable to invest money into machines and supplies to make a squeaky dog toy. Whereas at a very high price, many more people are willing to say, okay, I can get this cloth here and sew together my own toy and I can sell it for $100. Alright, so that's why supply looks like that and demand looks like that. And right here where they cross is called equilibrium point. It's where everybody that's trying to sell squeaky dog toys and everybody that's trying to buy squeaky dog toys, they're all happy because the perfect amount of exchange is happening, and it's happening at the equilibrium price. So let's discuss the case of price ceilings. So one example of this is the 1970s. There was a price ceiling on oil, and the government said you're not allowed to sell oil for more than $5.75 a barrel. And so what happened was supply was reduced to this point, and demand exceeded. So if you look at quantity demanded, it exceeds the quantity supplied, and you have the demand being greater than the supply. That's called a shortage, and that's because the equilibrium price lies above the price that was set as a ceiling. You also have price floors, and that's when the state or another party orders and commands that you cannot sell this good or service for lower than this price. One example of this is minimum wage. So if this was a graph for supply and demand of labor, a service, then you could say the price of labor is wages. Okay, so this minimum wage is saying you're not allowed to have a price for wage below this level. And so if equilibrium point is below this, then you're going to have a surplus of labor because supply of labor exceeds the demand of labor. And so this surplus of labor is called unemployment or underemployment. And this actually happened a few years ago in Seattle when they raised the minimum wage. In 2014, it was $9.47. And then in 2016, they raised it to $13 an hour. What happened was people worked fewer hours, people were laid off, and the net effect was to have an average of $74 less every month for low-wage employees. So that's the effect of a price floor. And the third thing I'd like to discuss today is taxation. So taxation effectively increased the cost of production, and so our supply curve will go from here and it'll shift that way to here, S2. And so you'll have a new equilibrium point because it's more expensive for people to manufacture things. There's going to be less supply, and it's going to have to happen at a higher price. So your equilibrium point before E1 is right here at this quantity, and E2 is at this quantity. So the net effect of taxation in the most fundamental way is to increase the price of a good or service and to decrease the transactions that occur within society. So if we're talking about squeaky dog toys being exchanged, then there's going to be fewer squeaky dog toys manufactured and sold to consumers. And the price of the squeaky dog toy will end up being higher. So these are 3 examples of market intervention. There are, of course, many ways that the state can intervene. And it's not just the state. You can also have parties like the mafia, the mob, saying you can't do business here, or you're going to have to pay a fee to do business here, things like that, where they control a region. So you have price ceilings, price floors, and taxation. These are 3 examples of market intervention, and the effects are shortages, surplus, and change in the price and quantity exchanged. Thank you.